Kia ora tātou no mai haere mai, and a warm welcome to our first Rangitāne o Manawatū committee meeting. And apologies for our lateness of starting here Wednesday the 26th of April 2023. Before I go through the housekeeping, actually no, I'll do that first. Look, I just will explain the meeting's being recorded, it's being live streamed on our council's YouTube channel. Our health and safety requirements will come up on screen, but everybody here I think is quite well familiar with them. It's a non-smoking facility in the event of an emergency, and I say that carefully with this morning in mind, that we will assemble Te Marae Hine next to the clock tower, and any incidences please speak to the administration team. Our toilets are in the link span as you entered, and we do have a defibrillator located, again, in unlikely need of using it, in front of house. Online today we will have Danielle Harris and Councillor Hancock, and I welcome all those others here and in the gallery. We will now go to our order paper, and I'll invite Councillor Fitzgerald to open, please.
Te koro matua tēnā koe, koro ko te tuahine whai a Debbie. Koutou e te whare, tēnā tātou. Kōrua kei rongo e te matunui e te whanaunga Daniel, e mihi tēnei ki a koe. Hau te rāko tēnei te kupu mihi ki a koutou katoa, kua tai mai nei te ahi ai. Ko tēnei te hui whakahirihira o mātou o Rangitāne, me o mātou ngā kai kaunihira, me te kaunihira hoki. Huri noa te whare, tēnā koe, kōrua Todra o ko Leon, mihi whānui ki a kōrua. Me o mātou manuhiri kua tai mai nei, Peter te rangi tēnā koe te rangatira, Ruma Karaitiana mihi aroha ki a kōrua anō. Huri noa te whare, tēnā koutou. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Before I ask declarations of office by Rangitāne members, just the members of this committee, because we do have a few apologies here today, is co-chairs myself as Mayor and Mr. Wiramu Tiawiawi. We councillors on our committee here, our Māori councillors, ward councillors, Deputy Mayor, Debbie Marshall-Lobb and Councillor Rowley Fitzgerald, but also Councillor Vaughan Dennison, Councillor Billy Meehan and Councillor Karen Naylor and Councillor Katie Sabellin. Also from Rangitāne, Ms Danielle Harris and Mr Chris Whaipu. Declarations of office to be made by Rangitāne members. We have a couple of apologies, but we do have online Danielle, and if I could ask you to recite the oath, please.
Kia ora, Mr. Mayor. I, Danielle Harris, representing Rangitāne o Manawatū as mana whenua, declare that I will faithfully and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the spirit of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and in the best interests of Rangitāne and the city, the powers, authorities and duties vested in me by my tupuna, and by virtue of my appointment as a committee member of Palmerston North City Council, always upholding and honouring my Rangitāne nui rawa.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we have another item which is acknowledgement of service to some former committee members from Rangitāne, and I just want to acknowledge Ruma Tukariana and Peter Tarangi, and I would just like to take this moment to thank you for your service in the last term. a little bit of remiss that we didn't do that a little bit sooner, and please accept apologies of council. But it is important that we acknowledge the work that you do and still do in our community. So, Peter, your committee membership with the Environmental Sustainability Committee, and Ruma with the Economic Development Committee, and I do want to thank you personally and on behalf of my council colleagues for your work that you did last term and that you continue to do in our community. We have a small token here for you, and I'll just pass these to you. Right, we'll move through to our number 2 is order of business is apologies, and we do have 2 apologies, or 3 actually. Full apology from Mr. Chris Whaipu and Mr. Wiramu Te and for early departure for the Deputy Mayor, Deputy Marshal Lobb. So look, I'm happy to move those. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Naylor. And if there are no comments, I will... Oh, sorry, Councillor Naylor.
Mr Mayor, I did just have a question about what the quorum requirements are for this committee, given
I checked that. We have a quorum.
Yeah, I'm just interested to know, in terms of the partnership arrangements, if we are lacking, you know, obviously...
We have 3 Rangitāne representatives here with our 2 councillors and Danielle Harris online.
Thank you.
Okay, could we vote, please?
Oh, hang on. The only people voting are the members of the committee. We'll need to rerun.
Should I abstain?
Okay, sorry, it wasn't made clear to my colleagues. That's why I mentioned the membership of the committee votes. Thank you. So we'll take that vote again. That's 8 votes for and none against. Thank you. We'll move through to...
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I just wondered for members that aren't on this committee that they still have speaking rights
Yes,
to this
they
committee.
do.
Do you want to outline just their rights and differentiation of what we're...
So obviously you can attend and you can speak, ask questions and comment. The only thing you cannot do is vote. And that is set out and was voted by all of you as the terms of reference for this committee. Thank you. Okay, we'll move through to number 3, notification of additional items. I haven't had any late items for the meeting. There is none from the floor, thank you. Now, declarations of interest, if any. Haven't received any. And we will now go to public comment. Again, I haven't been notified of any. There's nothing that's walked through the door. No, thank you. Right, we'll move through to number 6, and one of our most important projects with our partners is Te Mautoa Poutoa and the Design Working Party and a progress report, and that is on page 7 of your papers, and invite Kathy Deva-Todd, Parks Manager, to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors and members of Rangitāne. This report is the first report back to the committee since December 2021, which has been a relatively long period of time, and there's been a number of reasons for those delays. But over that time, we haven't sat still, and there have been a number of meetings with the Design Working Party, which is made up partly of the project team members from council staff and a collection of suitably skilled and qualified and interested people that represent the various complexities of this project. And it is a complex project because we're looking at a historical site that has current recreation uses, historical from a cultural point of view, and we're looking at the future of that site, and we're looking at that future of that site with a very long-term view. So in the report, we have covered the various things that have occurred over the months since we last reported. One of the things that I'd like to highlight from the report is the fact that we have reached a bit of a crossroads with the project. And the crossroads with the project is whilst we have consolidated aspirations for the site, we really, until this point, haven't looked at the feasibility of those aspirations, including the feasibility from a financial, cultural, social and environmental point of view. And that's the phase we're at now. And so Steve Bramley has been appointed by council to work with the working party on what would be termed probably a or preliminary business case. And last week, Steve met with representatives of the Design Working Party, and on Friday we had a very successful hui out at Tauranga Marie, and from that, Steve has gone away and is working on some various stages. The next report back to council, as highlighted, to the committee, sorry, as highlighted in the report, will be when Steve has presented his findings at the end of June. And we will bring back what those findings are, and that will help set us in very good stead for going forward on our next plans from a financial point of view, as I've said, but also a project management point of view as we step forward into the future. In effect, what we're looking at the moment is not diminishing any of those aspirations, but looking at what are those aspirations and how they may be put into a program of projects going forward that may occur over a short period of time or over a very long period of time, depending on the information that Steve provides back to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Probably worth adding to, with Steve's relatively new to the work, in that his work's only really just started in the last few weeks. That's correct, isn't it?
It is correct. We were pleasantly surprised on Friday how much work Steve had done with the background reading material, and I think he's brought himself up to speed on the project very quickly, and meeting certainly with the stakeholders in the project, and particularly those in the Design Working Party. I feel that he has already a good understanding of the project.
Yeah, I did too. So for my colleagues around the table, and Rangitāne have met him as well, obviously, Steve comes from SGL Group. Happy to Google that. You'll find the level of cultural, leisure and recreational projects that he's been part of in New Zealand and Australia. I'll open up for any questions. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathy. The report, you've talked about the working party. Does this report represent the feedback from the working party, or is there any other mechanism for feedback from that working party?
So the working party I'm referring to here is the project working party, a collection of specialists that have been brought together to guide the project. Rangitāne also have a working party, which is represented on our design working party by Chris Whaiapoi. But the working party has been initiated and brought together by council officers, so it's appropriate that it's a council report to this committee that comes forward.
Thank you. So I guess I was really interested in reading the report, but I was kind of looking for a little bit more detail around some of the work that's been covered in those working parties. Will that come to this committee at some point? Or when will we get the opportunity to see that?
Yes, it will. So some of the work that Steve is doing at the moment is due diligence on the work that the working party has already been working on. So we've deliberately left that in draft and not brought it to this committee at this stage because of the work that Steve's doing. And he's really looking at that, and I guess including the missing elements. So whilst we've been working on the aspirations and the concept designs, we haven't been able to nail down yet what that might cost, what the government or management arrangements are. So we preferred to bring back to the committee the whole suite of that information rather than just the piece that the working party have been working on.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Cathy. Have we got budget put aside for the project director role? Because that seems to be a new role that wasn't envisaged at the start of this plan.
Yes, because it's business case development, it is not something that we can capitalise, so it is being funded out of the general parks budget for consultancy that we have in the current year.
Okay, cool, thank you. And what was the procurement process to engage, or that came up with Steve as the project director?
Through the chair, it was a direct procurement process. We're looking for people that had specialised in being able to obtain funding for projects such as this, had worked in this particular space in the past, and Steve's quite well known to the industry, so selected through that process.
Okay, and was the Rangitāne input into that process?
I'll just recheck through the mayor as well, but I understand that there was...
The contact came from Rangitāne.
Yep.
Sorry, what was that?
The contact of SGL
Yeah.
came via iwi connections via Rangitāne.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just one quick question. I recall that we allocated around $1 million of the Better Off funding to designing this project program. I believe it's the second tranche of Better Off that's now been taken off the table. Was this funded out of the first or the second tranche?
This is funded out of neither. This is funded out of current year operational budget. This work will be necessary work leading into the design and consenting process that was included with the Better Off funding.
Okay, so we'll deal with that as and when it comes up.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay, no comments, further questions, sorry, nothing online. Thank you, Cathy. All right, we have a recommendation. So we have the Manawatū Design Working Party Progress Report, and the committee resolves to receive the report titled Manawatū Working Party Progress Report presented to this Rangitāne o Manawatū Committee on the 26th of April 2023. If I could have a seconder for that. Thank you, the Deputy Mayor. I'll open it up for any comments, but if I could just say thank you to the officers and our partners Rangitāne for this brief progress report. And I say that because there is a lot of work going on as we speak. Having Steve Bramley and the SGL group involved, I think, has been good in the understanding of the cultural competency of the consultants, but also their success on understanding capital, OPEX, governance type arrangements on these sorts of projects. The aspirations and concept design are pretty well understood. The site is confined, so it's not exactly a total blank sheet. We do have to work within some parameters. But without going too far, and remembering this is a once-in-a-generation project, there has been some tempering of let's understand what exactly can happen. The capital raising, and this council's been through this before, an example is Wildbase, where we can do this work and we can exceed in this area, but then it's the governance, the OPEX, how does that all work? And I think with this project, that is as big a question that needs to be answered as the capital raising. And I have some real confidence that we're dealing with that in a good way. So the governance, the management options, I think are really important too. So we collectively build a fantastic facility that meets the aspirations of Rangitāne, a civic marae that the city is extremely proud of. But then, how does it run? How does it continue? So we've got to, those questions need to be answered right at the start as well. So that's why we probably have gone not slower, but we're stopping to regather those thoughts, making sure that we're all on the same page going forward. So thank you to the officers, and look forward to work that will start to come through relatively quickly in the next few months. Open it up for any other comments. Okay. All right, we will vote, please. Yeah, it is passed, 8 votes for, none against, thank you. We move through to number 7, which is the Te Whiri Kuku Council engagement with Rangitāne or Manawatū, and invite Todd, our Principal Māori Advisor, to take us through that, and that's page 13 of your papers, councillors and members. Todd.
Tuatahi e mihi ana ki ngā pautikanga o te rānei. Kia koe Debbie, nau rā te karakia I timata I tō tātou rā. Taina atu kia koe Rowley, nā kupu whakatau, whakamihi, e kawia nei a tātou, nō re mihi ana kia korua tahi koutou. Ki te wikaanga o Rangitāne koutou nā pātaka kōrero o rātou mā, e pupuri nei ki te mauri o te whenua tēnā koutou, I aku rangatira. Kia koe Grant, koutou, Debbie, nā te kahika tuarua me nā kai kaunihera koutou e pupuri nei ki tēnei kahui whakahaere o tō tātou nei taone e mihi ana. Tautoko hui nā mihi ki a rātou mā I maumaharatia I nānahi me ki ai whakaro ake I te whakatinana hia I era whakaro I rongi te marao hine I nānahi te nui te maha o nā whānau me ki e hui I reira ki te tuku mihi, ki te tangi, ki te poroporaki ki a rātou. Nō reira, rātou ki a rātou, tātou ki a tātou, tō ngora tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora tātou. Honour to represent this report today in relation to Te Whiri Koko, which is a representation of both a core forum that the council comes together with, primarily council officers with Rangitāne leadership and guidance in relation to identifying, progressing, navigating a lot of the operational spaces of the organisation in terms of the partnership with Rangitāne or Manawatū. As recorded, the forum has been in place for probably just over or about 20 years. And initially, really a coming together to ensure that there was sort of an efficient, clear, understood indoor space from the council perspective, particularly from our senior leadership team, and from Rangitāne, where council could bring forward its projects that are primarily already mandated by the elected members. But similarly, Rangitāne could also represent or clarify or ask for questions to be responded to and navigated in that space. It has evolved and over the last 20 years or so, and in particular in the last 12 months has expanded somewhat. It now meets more regularly than the initial bi-monthly, meets monthly now, and it's usually approximately a 3 to 4 hour session, and it alternates between two primary areas of focus. One is infrastructure, So really just keeping up with a significant amount of work within that function of council and the connected interests with our mana whenua partners Rangitāne. And then the other session is a broader focus which pretty much covers the other areas of council business. So that's just some introductory kōrero. Probably just as a last point, I would note that Te Whiri Kōkō is more than just the expression of that forum, but also expresses somewhat of the essence of the relationship. So for example, when we are training or orientating staff to this space, we're able to not just convey technically how staff engage and how it works, but also some of the wairua, some of the mauri, some of the intent of the partnership. Yeah, so kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, thanks Todd. So if I could kick off, I mean obviously the kaupapa or the discussion that goes on between Rangitāne and staff is sort of based on the partnership and the agreement. Is that right?
Yep, that's accurate. But it is a way of aligning, I guess, the particular interests that Rangitāne have in terms of how we engage with them on the sort of projects that get discussed in this room. So obviously identifying whether there are particular leads within the iwi who might be the go-to for certain specialties or certain skill sets they have. So it really just helps the organisation kind of navigate how we're going to work through and then represent those issues in this space.
Okay. I'll let others speak first. Councillor Naylor.
Me? Oh, thank you. Thanks, Todd. This report outlines, the history of the bi-monthly kōrero, and now with the Te Whiri Kōkō, having that reported here in the way of this report is obviously really good. I'm just wondering what the next steps are. Is this intended to be a regular report to this committee?
Yes, that is the intention and is acknowledged within the report. So the request from elected members was to bring and acknowledge the presence of Te Whiri Kōkō, and to, so obviously, which is probably a one-off, kind of give some of that background, a little bit more of the context. But the report goes on to really talk about that at each of these hui, there will be an update of, if you like, maybe new projects that have come into those discussions, or perhaps as certain projects have progressed. It's interesting from the Te Whiri Kōkō place. It's all like one strand. Like I get in this room, there are decisions and moments. Te Whiri Kōkō is this wonderful process where there's all kind of a continuity with it, and obviously at certain key points, those projects come to this space, and I understand that the intention of these updates, if you will, is to align a little bit more some of the progress of discussions with iwi in that operational space, so that it may be that you will have a stronger link between, if you like, the internal operational discussions and ultimately those issues that are coming to you on the floor in these forums. That makes sense.
Okay, just following on from that, thank you. The bullet point of 4.2 on page 15 outlines the hui is essentially between the Rangitāne and council staff. Over the years, some of us have expressed a desire for that connection to happen at an elected member level, rather than simply through staff, and sometimes there's been a little bit of frustration perhaps from elected members feeling like they're not in the loop with that relationship. Do you think that simply reporting the discussion at Te Whare Kōkō, reporting it to this committee is adequate, or do you think there should be further opportunity for governance to engage with Rangitāne to progress some of this work?
My understanding is from the elected members' perspective, but also from Rangitāne leadership, is that there's a recognition that there are different levels of engagement. There's relationship at the area of rangatira and our council representatives here at the table. There is also a senior management and leadership role, and there are some roles there that are different from, if you like, the broader operational focus of parts of council. So I would reflect that in the past we haven't always been able to provide or create that connection between elected members and iwi leadership. But it certainly seems that in terms of what you've been seeking, much of that is now unfolding or is in place. And I'm aware, for example, you met with Rangitāne leadership at Te Rangi Māori Marae last week, and it is exactly those initiatives and those forums and those spaces which my understanding is to respond to that really important dynamic, which is the ability for our elected members and iwi leadership to meet directly, to raise things or raise matters at that level, and then when appropriate, there are signals that come into the organisation through the chief executive, which then arrive with other functions and staff within the organisation. So we haven't, over the last few years, really, I think, maintained that ongoing sort of constant routine that I think I hear in your question as a concern. But I do see a huge commitment from those at the table here to ensure that there is absolutely regular, committed time for you to appropriately talk as leaders with each other. And so while this forum, I think, has continued to successfully progress a lot of work, I would humbly say that processes such as took place last Thursday are going to be more satisfactory in terms of a leadership-to-leadership conversation. So, I believe that now that we have those in place, and they will be regular, hopefully they'll respond to those concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Todd, a lot of the kaupapa is based on. I keep coming back to the kawanata that we signed in 2018, I think. I understand that's a living document, but are we ever going to look at that again? Because things have moved positively. Is that something you can answer, or is it something that I probably should direct at Rangitāne leadership? I'm not sure.
Well, I'm looking at my chief officer as well, might have a response to that. So with the partnership agreement, we do have a schedule around that, and that's a bit more regular. But in the kāwenata, that I don't think is a particular trigger. But is it something that should be possible, of course? And I would imagine, certainly with agreement of all the key parties, that could occur at any time and could be broached in one of these leadership meetings that such as the one that just occurred. So, yeah.
Okay. Wade.
Yeah, through the chair, I think it would be a great idea to actually review the document every so often. I think sometimes in that, and it's just thinking about when that might occur, but is one of the things you don't want to be doing is taking any sort of relationship for granted, and I think it's a good chance to refresh, stop, think, and then go ahead. It might be fine just as it is, but taking a point in time to review it is always good.
We do that with other documents in a term, and I just wonder if it's worthy of that. But again, that's something we can talk to our partners about. Councillor Wood.
Mr Mayor, I put myself in the queue for Councillor Fitzgerald, who wasn't working.
Councillor Fitzgerald. That's partnership, isn't it? Thank you.
And I haven't turned blue just yet, but anyway. Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Todd, for the reports, obviously, and to my whanaunga. I've got a couple of questions, and it all stems from the kawinate, I guess, back in 2018. In terms of 3.2 in your reports, Todd, you've identified the three entities that bear the responsibility on behalf of all the iwi, and Danielle, it's probably unfair on you because your two other iwi representatives are not with us. The question I have through the chair to Todd, to Danielle perhaps, is the reporting back to the iwi. How does that happen?
Kia ora. Well, I can answer how I report back to the iwi in terms of us. We have our own governance hui in that, so that is the forum in which I report back to the iwi. It's reflected in things like our AGM and those kinds of documents in that as well.
Sorry, Daniel, are you talking about, not talking about the settlement trust, are you talking about the marae? Is that right? Have I got that right?
Well, I'm talking about Tāne Nui a Rangi Manawatū Incorporated Rupu. Yes.
Okay. 4.6, Todd, in your reports mentioned that there is an iwi management plan. Is it possible to have that socialised with the elected members, or does that need to sit in the cupboard somewhere?
Mr. Mayor, I could probably answer that one. That's the plan that we presented on last Thursday at Te Rangi Māori, I think he's referring to.
Oh, the environmental management plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Danielle.
I was wondering, Danielle, could you just speak to it, just to clarify for those listening in what document we're referring to?
So Rangitāne has finally developed its environmental management plan. So we've been starting to socialise that with councils because it is a document that councils will have to take into account when undertaking any planning and policy development in the resource management space and in the environmental space in general, with the likes of the Te Manawatū statement coming out and changes in national policy.
Beautiful. Just a follow on, and Danielle, it'd be fair to say that those of us that were present for your presentation last Friday were more than impressed with that environmental management plan. Just perhaps a message to the Mayor, if we could change in the minutes that the iwi management plan is actually referring to the environmental management plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Danielle.
Sorry, I didn't have anything to say, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Kia ora, Todd. It's just a question about the makeup of the Te Wherikoko group, I suppose. From reading the report, is there no representative of Ora Connect or Te Tihi Whānau Alliance on the group?
No, it's a iwi engagement structure, forum. The connections to Te Tihi, which is a key and pretty primary driver for our wider Māori community engagement, is achieved through other structures. So there are decision-making structures from the Whānau Ora Strategic Group, which I'm a member of, and there are also many staff and council leaders in the middle of different project spaces. There's the Kotahitanga Alliance, which has senior managers and staff connected in terms of helping to coordinate housing, and Ora Connect, which is a very large collection of projects that relate to the southwest suburbs of Palmerston North. So Rangitāne work very closely with the Whānau Ora Alliance to ensure alignment and appropriate engagement. But Te Whiri Kōkō is really about meeting our treaty obligations in terms of mana whenua position. So sometimes, for example, you might say there could be some duplication. So we might be working with the wider alliance and then speak with Rangitāne specifically about council's role in fulfilling both a responsiveness to our wider Māori community, but also making sure that we're fulfilling our relationship with mana whenua. So no, there aren't other iwi or Māori representatives on Te Whiri Kōkō itself.
Okay, so in paragraph 5.3 then, where you've got a discussion about Te Tihi and Ora Connect, how is that relating to Te Whiri Kōkō in that sense then, since you've said that they're specifically excluded from that?
I should be more specific then. Obviously, Council is very committed to Te Tihi, Te Whanawara and to both spaces. I could summarise the Rangitāne role, especially in the early days, of making sure that we are in that room. So Rangitāne uphold and see the Whanawara approach as being really critical to achieving positive outcomes for both Rangitāne but also for the wider Māori community. So Rangitāne's insistence has been, Council, you need to be in the Te Tihi space. That is the space that not only has a huge amount of endorsement from Rangitāne, but also iwi leaders from across the entire region are committed to that space. And they are similarly communicating to other local councils that we all need to be working in this space, because this is something constructed by an iwi alliance. It brings together resources, commitment and a worldview and the ability to work in an enabling way together. However, so Rangitāne gets us into the room, and when we are meeting with Te Tihi, there are Rangitāne representatives in that Te Tihi room, in that whare, but our relationship, our partnership with Rangitāne is what's being managed in Te Whiri Kōkō. That is, we're going, showing them our work plans and seeking guidance as to how we should engage with the Māori community, but the Māori community don't come into that space directly because the partnership isn't with the Māori community, it's with Rangitāne as mana whenua. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, it does help, but do we need to have another forum where we're engaging with the wider Māori community then? Because it seems to me that there's a kind of a gap here where we're engaging with Rangitāne through Te Whiri Kōkō, but we're acknowledging that Te Tihi and Ora Connect are significant bodies of work in the city, but there's no forum for engaging with them directly as council, or is there?
Well, I guess this is, how does this work? So, iwi Māori have created spaces, and there's spaces that they've asked many government partners to work in, and the spaces created by Te Tihi with iwi endorsement are those spaces. So, for example, the Kōtahitanga Alliance is seen as a positive way of progressing collective outcomes around housing and other outcomes. And what I humbly understand, Rangitāne are communicating to us by endorsing these spaces is, Council, you go there and you work with that group, which includes us and includes the Māori community. I might be going too far in saying don't set up your own thing, but we want to be careful about setting up our own thing if there's already a space which has that endorsement, has that space provided for engagement and is achieving successful outcomes for Māori. So
if I could just add too, Todd, that our terms of reference allow them to come and speak to us here. And one or two of them are sector leads too, so they will come back to council in some form or another. But yeah, it's a very good point. They're quite influential and need a voice to us.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just wary of time. I need to keep a quorum here, and I'm aware one of our members will be leaving soon. So I'll go back to you, Councillor Naylor, as a member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just Councillor Fitzgerald's comments sparked my memory regarding the environmental management plan that was presented to us to the marae last week. And I'm really interested to understand how, what the process will be for us to perhaps progress for us to look at that more comprehensively and look at potentially progressing some actions from that. Would it be an appropriate thing to add to the work plan for this committee?
I'm going to suggest that.
Oh, well, I'm very happy to support that, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
So we don't need any comment from...
I don't think we do. I mean, I think
Rangitāne?
I think we're going. I think they will want this discussed,
Yep.
and it's coming to all of you in a soft and hard form. But I'm going to suggest that it comes onto our work program as well.
Appreciate that.
Very quickly, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Kia ora, Todd. Thank you. Brief question about Te Whare Koko, thinking from a point of view of a treaty and partnership. Can you comment on kind of the share of initiative or agenda setting within that? Because quite a bit of what I see reflected in terms of here sounds like council initiative and iwi response. I'm just wondering, is there scope there for shared initiative, and is that scope being taken up?
The intention is to create a mutual space. So a lot of the kaupapa do come in there from, I guess, from council. But it's really interesting if you look at, David, you might be able to help me, the name of our major projects as a council. I've just lost the connection.
You Tanganui?
No, there's a collection of them.
Catalyst projects?
Yeah. So if you look at the catalyst projects, in terms of our engagement with Rangitāne, many of those are also Rangitāne priorities. So we have this, I think, really inspiring situation where often issues in kaupapa which are a priority to the city and to the council also align with Rangitāne's priorities. There's some very obvious ones, such as the river framework, where there's clearly a strong collective element. But even broader economic, cultural, social outcomes, there's humbly, in terms of Rangitāne, there's some very similar prioritisation. So it's often hard to see something as being a council or an iwi, a separate element. But certainly the iwi can and do lay down and utilise that forum to get, if you like, responses from our staff on matters that are a priority for them or to elevate those projects.
Thank you. Mr Mayor.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Todd. Appreciate you pulling together this report, and I think it's really important that it comes regularly to us. It's our oversight. Okay, great, thank you. All right. We'll get the recommendation up on screen. I'm aware that some want to speak to it. So this is around recommendation that the committee received the titled report Te Whare Koko, Council's engagement with Rangitāne on Manawatū, presented to this committee on the 26th of April 2023. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Again, I just want to acknowledge staff. I don't personally want to dive into the detail of everything, and I don't think we should be, because that's an operational sense, but it is good to get an understanding of what is actually going on. There's some broad brush projects, and we should be, I think, celebrating some of them, to be really honest, and some of the projects that we're doing together, because they run across many different sectors, many different departments, and they weave pretty well through everything we do now. And I don't think there's any harm in saying we're doing this here, we're doing that there, and we're doing this work here. In fact, I think it's a real positive. So I encourage the officers to bring that forward to the next meeting. But again, just acknowledge we've come a long way in the 9 years I've been here, and it's real progress. It's real positive progress. Danielle. Sorry, Danielle, could you start again? We just didn't hear the first part. We'll try again. No, you've dropped off, unfortunately, with the sound. Okay, we'll come back to you, Danielle. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really pleased to see this this report come formally to Council. My colleagues will know I've been asking for this for quite a few years to enable an appropriate feedback loop from this forum to elected members, and I look forward to this becoming a more regular item for this committee to discuss. As I alluded to in my questions, I do sometimes have some concern that the primary engagement in any sort of detail between Rangitāne is happening primarily with staff. And as the Mayor's said, there is some of that is appropriate, that's at an operational level, but I think we need to ensure that there is an appropriate level of engagement and oversight for many of these projects at this table, and I think this committee has been set up primarily for that in mind, for us to have an opportunity for a formal arrangement, a partnership with Rangitāne to progress the work. So I look forward to future reports and this being included in our work schedule, and I also hope that in time we can see that engagement and the sort of engagement that we had at the marae, but also in that translate to having discussions in this room. My reflection of the work of this committee over last term was that we did have some very good discussions, but sometimes we were a bit light on content and we had very short meetings. I would like to see this committee strengthen the opportunity for us to work to grow that partnership with Rangitāne, and actually for some of that discussion to come to this table. And I think this having this report is a good starting point for that, so I very much welcome it.
The Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship, and oku hoa mahi, nei rā te mihi hoki kia kōrua Peter Ruma mā o mahi whakahirahira. Tēnā koe Paroli, nau I whakawāte I a tātou mā te mihi me te whakatau. Thank you very much to, I acknowledge Peter Tarangi and Ruma Karaitiana for their contribution, just endorsing what was said by the Mayor earlier, and also thanked Councillor Fitzgerald for his words at the beginning. But thank you, everyone. Following up on what Councillor Naylor has said, I too agree with her. I think that when I looked at the committee work schedule, I thought, gee, that's quite light. But I'm also mindful of the fact that this is our first meeting and that we probably had things that needed to come, a bit of a wash-up, for want of a better term, from previous times. And I think we're looking at a reset and looking at exciting times ahead where we can have more content on the work schedule and bring that to our next meeting so we can get our teeth into some really good constructive things, and also so that we're all aware of what those are. And I, for one, want to thank the councillors for their appetite to enhance the relationship that we have with Rangitāne, and also Rangitāne's desire to continue that as strongly as possible. So, yes, I support what Councillor Naylor has said. And Todd, ngā mihi kia kōrua ko Leon, thank you for what you've done. I suppose when you were talking, it did make me think that from a Māori worldview, we do things somewhat differently and not necessarily use the same frameworks of communication that we would in this kind of forum. Sometimes those informal conversations can be very productive, and but I do acknowledge that I think in this space it's only going to grow more and more, particularly with Te Whiri Kōkō reporting back on each time we meet like this. So kia ora koutou.
Thank you. Danielle, we'll try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, well and truly.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to fully support the comments that you made earlier. From our point of view, Te Whiri Kōkō is going very well. There is quite a big amount of work in there. Some of it is really transactional, and I wouldn't see it coming to a committee like this. But in particular, some of the big projects we work on, we are having that conversation at that governance level, rangatira to rangatira. So, for example, sometimes we'll take staff from our environmental centre to the meetings because they might be around a particular environmental issue. So, and also we do have opportunity to help set the agenda and put things on the agenda if we do want to be heard. For us, it's a really good way to put faces to names of council staff. We often meet with them via email or on telephone conversations. So this is a real good opportunity, kānohi ki te kānohi. And it's been really great to move them from bi-monthly to monthly because it does just give us a little bit more time to have fuller conversations. We did find that we were getting struggling to get through some of the agenda items. So I think in time, you know, now that we've got the meetings going well, there's definitely areas we can improve in terms of reporting back to this committee. And it might be something as simple, Todd, as just adding in a list of the kind of conversations and that we do have, you know, a list of the topics, not so much the conversation. So I think like any process, there's always room for improvement as we grow and develop. But I would emphasise it is a unique arrangement for us, and I think it's a very fair reflection of our treaty partnership and our commitment to each other. So I would like to acknowledge the work of all the council staff because I know there's a bit of work that goes into the background in terms of setting the agenda and making sure that different areas of City Council come to the meeting. So thank you very much.
Kia ora, Danielle. Look, and finally, I think there is really good engagement here, and from the governance to governance side. We've widened the terms of reference, so this is an example, this paper we just, or report we're just voting on. And look, I would encourage, and I think it's not to be, we probably need a discussion about it. We should really encourage a re-signing or a recommitment in the term of the Kawanata agreement, because I think it's quite fundamental to the whole partnership and relationship with Rangitāne. But that's perhaps a separate conversation. So, councillors, if we've got the recommendation there, we will look to vote, please. And that is passed, 8 votes for and none against. Thank you. We'll now move to our last agenda item, and it's the work schedule. And like some comments that have been made in the previous discussion, it did look a bit skinny, in fact very skinny, compared to some of the work that actually has been going on. So rather than just adding them ad hoc, I'd like to ask the CE to look at a number of those programs that we do have quite a lot of work and shared interest in, and one is around the environmental management plan. Another is the Awa or Manawatū River framework, and it's really up to, and probably the other one is the Te Apiti biodiversity plan, and there's some updates that will probably come to us there as well. And again, Rangitāne and council work hand in hand on these projects. And there's others, you know, Te Tihi, Ora Connect, Whanaora, they all have opportunities to come to this committee, and I'd encourage the CE to perhaps reach out to those organisations to ensure that we have a good forward-looking work schedule in front of us. We'll always have Te Matua Pautoa to report on and Te Whiri Koko, so those are two sort of almost standing items for us, but there is more to be discussed as well. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I support your comments, but just want to check that Te Whiri Koko updates will be included. Lovely, thank you.
So look, I'm happy to move the committee work schedule be received, dated April 2023. The CE's got a clear direction from us, seconded by Councillor. Yep, Councillor Mann, seconded. Thank you. Are there any other comments? There being none, we will vote. And there's passed 8 votes for and none against. As the Deputy Mayor leaves, we will close the meeting. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Au te rā tēnā tātou I te whare. Ko tēnei te kupu whakakapi o tō tātou nei hui I tēnei rā e mihi whānui kia koutou katoa. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro. Tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tā ki e.
Kia ora, and thank you Danielle.